This is WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. And we have with us at WZRD via Zoom, Illinois Supreme Court Justice Joy Cunningham. How are you today, Justice Cunningham?
Good morning, Trudy. I am fine. I'm wonderful.
That's great. That's great. And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. The year is going by fast already.
It really is, really. We discussed so much in our last interview, but there's still so much to talk about. Uh, you did you also mention that the bar associations they do a lot of trainings, right? And then you were president. You were the first African American female president of the Chicago Bar Association.
That is correct. I was president of the Chicago Bar Association, and I saw that as a great opportunity. I was the first African American woman president of a major non-ethnic bar association in the United States. And I saw that as an opportunity because it opens doors, for one thing. And secondly, the bar associations are extremely important to the legal community. And the legal community is extremely important to the community at large. So that makes bar associations a real integral part of what happens in a community from a civil as well as a legal point of view. So I was very proud to have had that opportunity.
At that point in your career, what was your position when you became the Chicago Bar Association president?
Well, when you become the Bar Association president, that's like a second full-time job, because at that time I was actually senior vice president, general counsel, and corporate secretary for a Northwestern Memorial Healthcare System. Mm-hmm. So I was in essence doing two full-time jobs, and that's what happens when you become bar president. So you really do have to have a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm. And the bar associations do periodic trainings for the attorneys too, right? Because
they do a significant amount of training. All attorneys in Illinois are required to have 30 hours of continuing legal education every 2 years in order to maintain their licensure. The Bar Association is one of the major sources of providing this continuing education for lawyers. So your membership in the Bar Association goes hand in hand with you being able to keep your license current, because just about every single area of law that you can think of, the Chicago Bar Association offers that as a course or as a resource. For example, if you practice real estate law in the Chicago area, there is a real estate law committee that the Chicago Bar Association has. And lawyers who are members of that committee, they get all of the current law, all of the current trends. They have other lawyers in the committee that they can call on as a resource if they have a particularly difficult problem. So yes, in addition to providing training for lawyers, it also serves as a resource. So being president of that organization is an enormous opportunity, but it's also a big responsibility.
Absolutely. When you say if an attorney encounters a difficult problem, is it in their practice?
In their practice. For example, if you're doing a closing on a home and you encounter something that you never encountered before, if you're a member of the Chicago Bar Association's real estate committee, you can call up one of the other members and say, hey, this is a problem that I have. I would like to be able to bring the closing to closure on the particular date, but this may be a hindrance. Have you ever seen this before? I mean, I personally know of those situations where attorneys call each other who are on these committees, and if they don't know the answer, they refer you to somebody else. It's almost like how can I say it? Like a society of lawyers that practice that particular area of law, and they vary widely from extremely experienced lawyers to brand new lawyers who are working in that area. So they have an opportunity to learn from the more seasoned, experienced lawyers.
Mm. And then when something does come up that's very unusual, I guess that ends up in the training, right?
Yes, it does. Definitely ends up in training. The Chicago Bar Association has many training courses for, as you know, there's so many different areas of law. And having training courses for the ones that are, I think, most widely used, like the civil practice laws and the changes in criminal laws and those kinds of things. It's very important. And the training is offered to Bar Association members, but other lawyers who are not members of the bar can also sign up for those trainings.
Oh, why wouldn't an attorney join the Chicago Bar Association?
That's a good question. I think maybe because they aren't aware of the benefits, and not just the Chicago Bar, all of the bar associations really provide a significant benefit to young lawyers. And I'll tell you, Trudy, I do a lot of mentoring and speaking to young lawyers, and I always encourage them to join a bar association. I said, it doesn't have to be the Chicago Bar Association. We have many bar associations. The Chicago Bar is the oldest one, and the Cook County Bar Association is the oldest African-American bar association, but you can join any number of others. And it's really important for young lawyers to do this because it puts them in contact with seasoned, experienced practitioners and judges who they would never otherwise meet for the next 20 or 30 years of their practice. So it's a real shortcut to learning a lot about the practice of law.
When you were a young lawyer, just starting out, when did you join the Chicago Bar Association?
Well, that's a very interesting story because when I was just starting out, I was a law clerk for Justice Glenn Johnson, who was then one of the first African Americans to serve on the Illinois Appellate Court. And he had a general rule: if you were going to be his law clerk and you were going to work for him, you had to join the Chicago Bar Association. And that's what he told me. And I can remember, Trudy, like rolling my eyes and thinking, oh my goodness, he wants me to join the Chicago Bar Association. I'm a young lawyer. I don't have much money. I don't want to pay the dues. But I didn't tell him that. I just smiled and said, yes, Justice, I will be happy to do that. It was the best decision. It was the best advice I ever took. I had to take the advice because he required all of his law clerks to join. And what he said was, when he was a young lawyer, a young man, he was not allowed to join the Chicago Bar Association because he was Black. And if you were Black or Jewish or any other race, you could not join. So he said he felt as soon as it was available and open to other races, he thought it was extremely important for us to join, to make our presence known, and to make changes from the inside. And that is exactly what I tried to do. But that was his mantra. And ultimately, during my presidency, he was awarded the Earl Boris Dickerson Award. It's the highest award that the Chicago Bar Association gives to an African-American lawyer or judge. And he was so tickled with that. He said, my law clerk, Joy Cunningham, when she was a young lawyer, I made her join the Bar Association, and now she's president. And as a result of that, I've gotten this highly prestigious award. And he was kidding a little bit. He says, of course, so I was the smart one, but all kidding aside, it was a very good thing for me to have encouraged her to do, and I'm glad she did it. And he was right.
You said that you tried to make some changes from within. What kind of changes?
Well, I think Justice Johnson's vision was, if you are part of the infrastructure of an organization, there are more opportunities for you to change the organization from within or help them focus on bigger picture things that they may not have been able to do or would not do if there is nobody inside the organization directing that focus. And that was his belief. And I think he was absolutely right, because as more diversity rose through the ranks in the Chicago Bar Association and became part of the leadership, we necessarily looked beyond just the narrow confines of being a Caucasian male, which used to be the entire focus of that bar association. Now, with leadership being diverse, we look to the community at large, all of the different voices that really come to the table. Really, it's quite enriching. And I think people began to realize that afterwards, as things unfolded and over the years, you realize having many different voices is really enriching.
In other words, you're saying that this diversity helps bring different opinions and different viewpoints and different knowledge to the table. If it were just the Caucasian males, it wouldn't be this wealth of knowledge.
That is very true, because the Bar Association, how it started and how it existed for a long, long time before it began to open its doors to diversity, basically, I think focused on only one segment of the legal community, and therefore only one segment of the community at large. And I think that's a very narrow focus. Our country, our community, our country, our city is becoming more and more diverse, and that's a good thing. And if you have multiple voices and multiple points of view at the table, of course it's going to enrich your knowledge. Your knowledge base will just by necessity grow. And I think that's the beauty of having diversity at the table on the inside of these organizations that were very unifocal in the past.
I read somewhere that the Chicago Bar Association is even larger than the New York Bar Association. Is it the largest?
That is correct. It's the largest municipal bar association in the United States.
You also served as a volunteer, and you won an award for volunteer services. And what kind of services were those volunteer services that helped you win the award?
Well, I'll tell you, Trudy, I have always been a quote volunteer throughout my adult and my professional life. When I first bought my first foray into volunteerism was for Planned Parenthood in New York. Let me digress just for a moment. I was a registered nurse before I became a lawyer, and my undergraduate degree is in nursing. And when I was a young nurse, I volunteered for Planned Parenthood in New York City. And I felt very privileged to do that, because Planned Parenthood provides healthcare services for young women that's far, and it's beyond the popular belief that all they do is abortions. That is not true. And of course, I can't take a position on any of that because of my status as a judge, but I will tell you that Planned Parenthood provides healthcare services for young women at very little cost. And when I was a college student, I was the beneficiary of the kind of healthcare services they provide: mammograms, pap smears, birth control pills, all of the kinds of healthcare services that young women need, but sometimes can't afford. And so when I became a nurse, I was a volunteer for them, just to pay back the fact that I had been the beneficiary of their healthcare services throughout my college years, when I really couldn't afford to go to a private doctor because I didn't have the money. So that's my nursing volunteerism. When I became a lawyer later on, I did 2 major stints of volunteerism, which I thought were noteworthy. I was one of the initial participants in an organization called CLAIM, and it stands for Chicago Legal Aid to Incarcerated Mothers. And it's for women who were incarcerated in Cook County on minor minor matters like retail theft or solicitation, prostitution, those kinds of things that are, well, they're crimes, but they're not violent crimes. And many of these women had children, and often they were single parent mothers. They were single parents. So we had many situations where a mother would be arrested, taken straight to jail, and she has 2 or 3 children there at home by themselves. And so the claim would get involved in bringing DCFS in to make sure somebody took care of the children. We would provide clothing for the women to wear to court when their court date came up. We would make sure that they were connected with a public defender, or if the public defender could not handle a case, we would fix them up with another provider of free legal services like the Chicago Legal Clinic or the Chicago Volunteer Legal Services. We visited them in the jail and gave them an outline of what to ask their lawyer when the lawyer came, and just practical things like that. And I did that for several years. And I found it was very rewarding. There was such a need. So I was one of the initial, I did not start the organization, but I was right there in the beginning. There were 3 or 4 women lawyers who started this, and I was one of the ones who started volunteering right from the beginning. Mm-hmm. My second volunteer activity had to do with doing disability hearings for seniors. I had a very good friend many years ago who ran a facility where mentally ill, mainly older people, mentally ill people were housed. And these people were all getting Social Security disability benefits because they were mentally ill. And this was back in the middle 90s. Social Security did a revamp of their criteria. So all of these people started getting letters saying, dear Mary Smith, we have decided that you are no longer disabled and you're able to work. And of course, nothing had changed. These people were just as disabled as they ever were. And they were too disabled to even figure out how to navigate the system. But all of a sudden, their money was cut off. Now, this was not the kind of law that I practiced, but I thought, well, at my friend's request, I'll take one of the cases and see how it works. And I kind of taught myself how to do it. And I ended up doing several of those cases. And I'm very proud of myself because I won every single one of them and got the people reinstated, because it was really an unjust travesty. It was more of a bureaucratic administrative decision. It had nothing to do with the real status of that individual. Are they still disabled? Yes. I had one woman who was I'll never forget her. She was not able to perform like any personal hygiene, none of that. And she gets a letter saying, you're able to work. I thought, this is insane. She was actually the first person that led me to start doing that representation. And I got better at it as time went on, but I won all my cases. But those 2 stints of volunteerism stick with me, because I do feel that that's why we have law degrees, to do good in the world.
I think you kind of got muted.
I was young and enthusiastic, and I felt this is really why I got my law degree. So I have to say that was a very rewarding time for me.
Mm. Well, and now that you're with the Illinois Supreme Court, for a lot of these justices that you work with, or even when you were on the appellate court, when you were in the bar associations, in your previous, in just your previous positions, did you meet any of the people that, any of the justices that you work with now, like many years ago, and it's not like you're just starting to work with them now. Is maybe did you already meet them before, because you've been so involved in everything, and then did you meet any of your coworkers before?
Yes, in fact, as you know, there are 7 justices on the
Mhm.
Illinois Supreme Court,
Mhm.
and I knew all of them before joining the court except one, and that's David Overstreet, and that's because he is from the 5th district, so he's from the southernmost part of the state. We knew each other, we knew of each other, and we had been on Zoom calls and so on, but I hadn't actually met him until I joined the court. Every single one of the others, I've either worked on committees with them, have been friends with them. We've worked, that's the beauty of the Bar Association, because all of these people through bar activities, we've known each other for decades. And I think that that's very important. It's something that I stress continually when I am talking to young lawyers. So for me, the transition to the Supreme Court was an easy one because I knew all of my colleagues before getting there, before arriving at the court. And so we were everyone was willing to help to make sure that my orientation went smoothly. And I think and that has been the case. So I feel very happy about that.
Mhm. And how long did the orientation take?
Well, you know what, Trudy, there are those who would say that I'm still being oriented because I have been on the court now a little over a year. I've been there a year and 1 month. And the Illinois Supreme Court is the highest court in our land. The work of the Supreme Court is much more complicated than the public knows. And I am doing well, according to my colleagues and according to my own assessment. But in my view, there's still a lot of learning left for me to do. It takes more than a year to really understand the intricacies and the nuances of being a Supreme Court justice here in Illinois.
Mhm. And what would you say is the nuance that you were most surprised about?
That is a good question, and people ask it all the time. And I will tell you, the biggest surprise to me when I joined the Supreme Court was the enormous amount of administrative work that the Supreme Court does. It is unbelievable. And you don't think of that. Look, I've been an appellate court justice for over 15 years before I joined the Supreme Court, and I had no idea. Illinois has 102 counties, for example, and there is a courthouse in every single one of those counties. We are responsible for overseeing what goes on in all of those courthouses. The Supreme Court is the oversight body for the juvenile justice system throughout the state. It is the oversight body for pretrial services throughout the state. It is the oversight body for the public defenders in many different counties. It is the oversight body for the probation services. All of this stuff, you think it's all stuff. It has to be monitored and administered. And remember, there are only 7 Supreme Court justices. So how do we do that? We have a very large administrative arm called the Administrative Office of the Illinois Courts. And that department is run by a director whose name is Marcia Meese. She's a lawyer and extremely capable. And we have probably 600 employees that work for the Administrative Office of the courts that manage all of this work. In addition, the Supreme Court on legal issues, we manage all of the legal business of the state through commissions and committees. For example, the Committee on Character and Fitness, that's the committee that determines or reviews applicants when they apply to become members of the bar. That's our responsibility. If you take the bar exam in Illinois, that's looked at by the Attorney Registration and Disciplinary Commission. That's we oversee that. The MCLE body, that's a whole organization that administers the continuing education for the hundreds of thousands of lawyers throughout the state. And all of that, the Supreme Court oversees. So the 7 of us, we have specific commissions and committees that each of us are responsible for overseeing. And we have, for example, I have maybe 6 committees and commissions that I am the liaison with the court, and I am the oversight body for that commission. So the Committee on Elder Law, for example, there's a whole commission that deals with that and court issues related to elderly people and changing the civil practice laws related to elderly people. That's a commission that I oversee. And so that's a lot of administrative work. And of course, when you think about the Supreme Court, you think we're only deciding cases. That ends up being just 50% of what we do.
So when you do all this oversight work, is it when during the rest of the year, and when you're not deciding cases, when you don't have any cases before you, then the rest of the time is all this administrative work, or do you have to do this administrative work even while you're trying cases?
We are doing all of it all at the same time. That's what makes it so interesting but so challenging sometimes. When the Supreme Court is in term, which means the court is actually, we are in Springfield, and the Supreme Court is in term 5 times a year: January, March, May, September, and November. And the term begins the second week of each of those months, and it's the second and third weeks of each of those months. When we go to Springfield, of course, that's where we hear cases, but we also have reports from all of these commissions. It's a steady stream of directors of these commissions and the director of the administrative office. They come and give us reports, ask for our permission to do various things. So it's constantly something in motion. When we are not in term and we are in our home chambers, for example, we're working on the cases that we heard when we were in term, because the cases are heard in Springfield, but then we go back to our home locations throughout the state and we work on those cases. And when we circulate them virtually, then when we go back to Springfield the following month, that's when we discuss them and usually come to some conclusion about what the outcome of the case is going to be, and then circulate the opinion among all 7 of us. So it's a constant, there's constant motion and activity, whether we're in Springfield or we are in our home bases. And I should just tell you, there are, as I said, there's 7 Supreme Court justices. 3 of the 7 are from Cook County, which is the 1st district. So I am one of those 3 for the 1st district. And then there is 1 each from District 2, District 3, District 4, and District 5.
When you talk about oversight, if some people who are in court, they have complaints about the various divisions, do those complaints are covered? Are they also covered by that oversight?
Well, I'm not sure if I understand the question. Are you asking whether if someone from the 1st district, and since I'm here, if they have some concern or question, would they then come to the justices of the 1st district with that complaint?
Yeah, like you mentioned earlier that the juvenile division is under your oversight as well, at least under the Supreme Court's oversight. So if someone had a complaint about the juvenile division, would those, in what way do those complaints fall under your purview, or is that handled by the commission and then the commission reports to the Supreme Court?
Well, we do have a Juvenile Justice Commission, and they take care of a lot of the, I wouldn't say administrative, but the policy issues related to juvenile justice in the state. And they make recommendations to the Supreme Court as to what we should do and whether a rule needs to be amended and that kind of thing. But as the liaison to that commission, I'm the liaison. If there is an issue, I would bring that issue to my colleagues of the Supreme Court with recommendations for how it should be resolved.
Mhm. And what kind of rules are we talking about? Are they the rules that govern that division? What kind of rules are we
Well,
talking about?
it's not really a division. Juvenile justice throughout the state has to do with many different things. For example, when a juvenile is held in custody, you know, there's a lot of rules about what can be done and what can't be done and how long you can hold them and circumstances. So all of those kinds of issues are constantly being reviewed and looked at, because dealing with juveniles, of course, is different than dealing with an adult, because, you know, what constitutes a juvenile? Any person under the age of 18. And so it's not a one size fits all, and that's what makes the responsibility of administering this segment of our legal system so tricky and dynamic. It's constantly changing and moving, and you really do need to see what each district is doing, because like everything else, Trudy, across the state, each part of the state has its own culture and its own personality. And what may work in Cook County, which is a real urban area, may not work real well in the far south part of the state that may be more rural. So it's a constant challenge to make sure that everybody is getting justice, but within the confines of what's appropriate for that particular situation.
So you almost have to learn the culture of the various districts as well.
I think that that's one of the reasons that it's a good thing to have different justices from different parts of the state, because they understand their part of the state. David Overstreet, for example, he's from far southern Illinois, and he is the justice from the 5th district. He understands his district. I don't, because, you know, that's not the area in which I practice or really have grown up, so to speak. So I think that that was a wise way that our framers decided to divide the Supreme Court. It was very wise.
You have also been a member of some foundations as well, like the Chicago Bar Foundation. How does what does the foundation do?
The Chicago Bar Foundation is the charitable arm of the Chicago Bar Association. And what it does is it provides legal resources and money, mainly money for legal resources, for a variety of causes that touch underserved people in our district in Cook County. For example, the Chicago Bar Foundation give grants to the Chicago Volunteer Legal Services, to the Chicago Legal Clinic, to the Metropolitan Communities for Open Housing. Those kinds of philanthropic legal organizations, they get money from the Chicago Bar Foundation, because that's the main function of the Bar Association, is to provide funding for legal resources for our underserved population.
Mm-hmm. And is there enough money to go around to the need, to fit the need?
Well, Trudy, that's one of those questions. There is never enough money to go around. Mm-hmm. And so the process that the Chicago Bar Foundation uses, as I recall, they invite the various organizations who are seeking resources or seeking funding to make proposals. They tell the foundation exactly what their organization does, how the money is being spent, and they ask for a specific amount, and then they will identify what the money is going to be used for. And often the Chicago Bar Foundation has a committee of members that will do site visits. They go, like if we get a response, a request from the Uptown Legal Clinic. I just named that one because when I was on a member of the Bar Foundation, I did a site visit to Uptown Legal Clinic. We get to tour the facility and meet some of the clients that these organizations service. And I think it's a good thing because it makes it real. You know, it's not just money on paper and you're shuffling papers from one side of the desk to the other. When you go out to these organizations and meet people, you realize, you know, this is a mother with, you know, who has real immigration needs, and she has 2 young children and no money, and she needs to be represented so she can get her immigration issues straightened out. Or this is somebody who's being evicted and they have no money and they need to be able to be represented so that they can find someplace new or address those problems. So I like the site visit part of what the Chicago Bar Foundation does, because I think it humanizes the people that the Bar Foundation is really helping.
Are you able to visit unannounced?
I think I'm sure you can, but we didn't do that because we wanted to be sure. For example, a lot of these organizations are very small. So we wanted to be sure that A, there was somebody there to greet us when we got there, and B, that whatever, we looked at their books and those kinds of things, whatever we would want to have available, that they would have some opportunity to get that ready. So I don't think that there was any prohibition about unannounced visits, but I don't remember ever participating in that, in something that was unannounced.
Mm. And all this this work, you know, on the foundation and your volunteer, how is it helping you as a Illinois Supreme Court justice?
I think having a real broad, diverse practice and practical background is a good thing for an Illinois Supreme Court justice, because the depth and breadth of cases and issues that the court has to decide, in my view, requires the justices to have a real broad spectrum of experience in a lot of different areas of life and legal practice. And I feel pretty proud of that because I definitely have that.
You mentioned some organization, open housing. I couldn't hear what the beginning part of that organization was called.
There was an organization called Metropolitan, it was Metropolitan something for open communities. Metropolitan.
That's okay.
I will look that up for you, because
Yeah,
that
okay.
was one of the ones that I thought was really, really helpful. And what my recollection is, what they did was they helped with making sure that housing discrimination didn't happen. If you had children, people wouldn't rent to you because you were a single parent with children and that kind of thing. So they had a very active executive director. So I know that I'm not saying the name correctly, but
That's okay.
the essence of it, of what they did, is just as I described.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very necessary service. At first, I was thinking that it has something to do with helping people find housing, because we get questions all the time about people needing housing. Do you have any organizations that you have assisted that do help people find housing?
That I'm not aware of. The one that I talked about, they help with discrimination, with people who had housing discrimination, that kind of thing. And there was a lot of need for that.
Oh, definitely, yes. And they also received the money from the foundation, right?
Yes.
Awesome. You were also a member of the other bar associations too. And then,
Yes.
in what way are the trainings different among the various bar associations? Since and usually they try to cover all the law. So are the trainings very different between bar associations?
Well, they're very similar, but bar associations exist sometimes for different reasons. For example, I am a member of the Black Women Lawyers Association. That is an organization that started, I think in the mid-'80s, and I was one of the early members of that organization. And one of the reasons that that organization was founded was to give women lawyers, Black women lawyers, a comfortable, safe space where they could interact with their peers, their true peers, and talk about legal issues, talk about what may have been going on, what is going on in their legal lives in a safe space and a space of comfort. So many of what we call the legacy bar associations, they're formed because lawyers want to interact with people who are like themselves. We have the Puerto Rican Bar Association. We have the Asian American Bar Association. We have the Muslim Bar Association. We have the Women's Bar Association. We have the Illinois State Bar Association. We have the Filipino American Bar Association. We have the Hispanic Lawyers of Illinois Association, and several more. We have the Decalogue Society. That's a bar association of Jewish lawyers. There is the Advocate Society. That's a bar association of Polish lawyers. So there are all of these bar associations for different ethnic and religious groups because the lawyers in that particular group wanted to feel that they had a safe space, a comfortable space of like-minded lawyers where they could feel that they were accepted and comfortable. That's not to say that they're not accepted and comfortable in the major bar associations like the Chicago Bar, the Chicago Council of Lawyers, the Illinois State Bar Association. But I think there is something extra that people get from their own ethnic bar associations. So it's not unusual to find people who belong to several bar associations, like myself. I belong to the Chicago Bar Association is the main one and the first one I joined, but I belong to several others as well.
I read also that you had to take several you are so did you take the bar exam in Illinois, New York, and so that you could practice in Illinois, New York, federal and federal trial bars? What does that mean? And how do the different bar exams differ? Of course, the different states have their different laws, but you have to understand the law of all these all four too.
Yeah, well, yes and no. I took the bar exam here in Illinois, but I am originally from New York, so I wanted to be licensed in New York as well. So New York allows me to be licensed by reciprocity, but at that time you had to take one section of the New York bar, something called New York practice, because the law in each state is a little different. And so if you were going to be licensed in New York, although they would accept your Illinois licensure as proof that you were able to pass the bar exam, you had to take their one section of bar association examination called New York practice. And I took that, passed it, and so I was licensed in New York based on the fact that I had been a licensed Illinois lawyer. And the federal bar is the same way. Because I had been a licensed lawyer in the state of Illinois and had met all of those criteria, I had to apply to the federal bar, and then they just look at your character and fitness and your bar scores from whichever state you're licensed in. And in this case, it was New York as well as Illinois, and I can gain licensure in that way. So that is what I did.
What's the difference between the federal and the federal trial bars?
The federal trial bar means that you can try cases in the federal court. You have to be a member of the federal trial bar in order to try cases in the federal court. Federal district court is quite, the rules are similar, but different. They're similar to state court, but different.
So you are licensed to try cases in federal court, but
yes, that's when I was trying cases. Now, of course, I've been a judge for many years, and when you're a judge, you cannot practice law.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Got it. So this is all these were for your work as an attorney.
Yes.
Got it. Well, yes. Thank you for clarifying, because when I look at all of this, it's really hard to navigate.
To parse it out and figure out what is what. Once you become a judge, you cannot practice law, and in fact, it's against the law to do so.
Mm-hmm. Of course. And I don't see how you have any time as well.
Now there's that. That is so true. There is no time.
Well, since you're so busy now, are you still doing any volunteering?
No, I'm not. And that's another thing. As a judge, the kinds of volunteering that I did as a lawyer is not permitted under the canons of ethics. Most of my volunteering these days has to do with visiting law schools and talking to young lawyers and community organizations. And I don't call that volunteering. It's more like community outreach, because I find that so many people are completely unaware of what the Supreme Court does or the judicial system as a whole. So I'm kind of a crusader, if you will, to get that information out to the public, because I think it's really important. The judiciary is the third branch of government, and it is the least understood or known branch of government. And in many respects, of course, I'm a judge, so I think of it as being the most important of the three. And the reason is, it's the branch of government that determines whether or not the other two branches are acting in a constitutional way or not. The judiciary is the one that determines if the governor passes or issues an executive order. The Supreme Court may be called upon to determine whether or not that's constitutional. If the legislature passes a law, the Supreme Court can be called upon, and that's happened many times, to determine whether or not that law is constitutional. So the judicial branch is extremely important, and the public knows the least about us.
What would you suggest that we could do to make the public, to help the public be more aware of the candidates that are running for judicial seats? For instance, when we go into the ballot, when we vote on election day, and we see that 100 names or so of judges, and we don't know who they are. How and what way can we change so that the voters understand better who these judicial candidates are?
Well, first thing I would have to say that you are playing a large part of that by talking with judges and lawyers like myself. I think this, just being in this interview with you, I think is a very good opportunity. And I consider that you're doing a great public service, because you're getting information out to the public in a way that they really need it, but may not know where to turn for it. The bar associations, all of them, and I consider the Chicago Bar Association to be the gold standard, because it was the first one that started doing judicial evaluations. They evaluate all candidates who are seeking judicial office. and they publish their findings. It's on their website. And they usually right before the election, they will push the findings out to print media and social media. So citizens can go to their website, they can look on social media, they can look in print media if they're still doing that, and find out how these candidates are rated. And I'll have to say that the CBA, the Chicago Bar Association, does a very thorough and complete job of investigating each of these candidates, and they give you a detailed recitation of the person's strengths, why they should be either voted for or not. And I think it's a good resource that the public often overlooks. And so one of the things that I think opinion shapers such as yourself can do, and it's a public service, is to encourage people to go to the Bar Association's websites and look at the candidates, see who they are and what the Bar Associations have to say about them, because I think that will give you a really good sense of whether or not this person is worth your vote.
Thank you for that. That's a very valuable advice, and I will take it. I think it was almost maybe at least 5 or 10 years ago, I used to receive from the Chicago Bar Association like a blue sheet of paper with all the names and the suggested the judicial evaluations. But now we don't receive that anymore. But I know that it is online, but just just a heads up, there are a lot of seniors and they're not computer savvy, but I think that some of those mailings, especially mailing those evaluations out to the seniors, would be very helpful.
And the document that you're talking about, it was called the Green Guide. I don't know, maybe
Yes.
because it was on green paper, but that's what it was called. And I think you're correct. It really does make a huge difference. So I do have contact and a good relationship with the current executive director of the Chicago Bar Association. And I will pass on your comment to her that you're no longer receiving the Green Guide, and this is something that would be a great public service.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. And also information about how just visit the Chicago Bar Association website for the judicial evaluations.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. It's posted there, and it gives you a really good synopsis of each of the candidates.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because I have noticed that people have not been using that. Usually people, when I work as an election judge, and people they tell me all the time, I'm not going to vote for that. I'm just going to vote for the major candidates. And it's so important to vote for the judicial candidates as well.
Absolutely, because judges make really important decisions that impact your life every single day, whether you know it or not. So I think it's a real civic responsibility to educate yourself about who these people are who are making these decisions that impact your life.
What do you see in the future, like about a year from now? Do you think that you'd be more well? Will you? How do you think anything will change in 1 year from now in your position?
Well, I think a year from now, certainly the election will be behind us.
Mm-hmm.
And I have done everything I can to ensure that the citizens of Cook County understand who I am and that I am their Supreme Court Justice. I'm currently sitting in the seat, and there should be a really good reason in order to unseat me and put somebody else there. So a year from now, I would expect that I will have retained my seat on the Illinois Supreme Court, and I will be even more seasoned. As I said at the beginning, there's so much to learn, and I'm a year and 1 month into the position as a Supreme Court Justice. A year from now, I will be 2 years and 2 months into my position. So I will be that farther along the continuum of really, really understanding the nature of the work, because it's complicated. So in a way, that's what I expect that I'll be, but I will be working as hard as I am now. And it's a wonderful opportunity. And I recognize that.
In your administrative work, there is so much administrative work. Do you see, is there any way that some of that administrative work could be streamlined? Is there any way for that to happen?
Yes, there is, and we're looking at that now. We have a very proactive Chief Justice, and she has, with the concurrence of the other 6 of us, we have convened a high-level committee of well-known practitioners throughout the state. And what we're doing is making sure that the practitioners bring forward to us any way of streamlining certain practices, rule changes, all of that, because we recognize that it's really hard for the court to be able to do that by itself. So that committee, it was recently announced, and it's made up of some of the more respected and seasoned legal practitioners in our state. And we expect that this is going to help us with streamlining some of these processes, because we're asking the practitioners, the people who actually do this work, how do you think we can do this better? And I think that that's a real step in the right direction.
What's the name of that committee?
It's the Committee on the Practice of Law. I believe that's what we call it, Committee on the Practice of Law. Which is a good overall name, because it gives them an opportunity to look at lots of different things, lots of different processes, complaints, comments, opportunities for improvement, and all of that.
And all other states, their states Supreme Courts also do administrative work like Illinois, right? Also,
yes, they all do.
Well, Justice Joy Cunningham, thank you so much for joining us on WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM today. Thank you for all your insight, your knowledge, and your advice, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much. And I really love being here and talking to your listeners. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.